Hey everybody, welcome to Living Pianos Live. I've been wanting to do this for a really long time, to get together with everybody to answer all your questions. You know, I started making videos, believe it or not, in 2001. It was a show, Keyboard Kaleidoscope. I don't suppose there's anybody out there who remembers it. Very few people had high-speed internet, so it was tough to connect with people. And here I can just have a window to the world in my studio. It's the most amazing thing. What you're going to get today are answers to all your questions and hopefully help you to get your playing on a higher level. That's what this is about. So we're going to start off. I want to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing and what I've been having going. You know, when you sit down at the piano and you're trying to accomplish something, knowing what's step one. How many of you out there feel like when you're going to the piano, it's hard to know even where to begin? It can be really tough to know what to start with, how to practice. That is the real challenge in piano sometimes. And what I've come up with from years, consolidating down to the essence, are the pillars. Because you think there's like hundreds or thousands of different aspects of piano playing, and really it all comes down to these essential pillars and knowing how to build them so that your playing can be on a higher level. There's reading of music, of course. There's learning music. Now some people will confuse. They think they're reading, they're learning. Which are you doing? Just reading through a piece a bunch of times, is that the best way to learn it? Not really. They have totally different methodologies. Knowing which one you're doing is half the battle. How many of you sit down at the piano and aren't sure what the step one is of how to accomplish something? Or you get done practicing and you wonder, what have you gotten done? Put a yes in the chat if that sounds like you, because I'm going to show you some tips on how you can supercharge your piano practice. Think about this. I make videos, I've got articles, I've got pianos, I've got a lot of things going on. So when I sit down to practice, I want to get done as much as I possibly can get done. And there's reasons for this. I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. So reading, there's learning, but there's also your technique and theory. Some people say you should practice hours and hours of, scales and exercises. And you know what? A little bit goes a long way if you know what to work on. You can just spend 5-10 minutes a day on pure technique and get a tremendous out of that experience without having to waste time. Because you know what's great about the piano? There's so much great music, and you can solve technical problems with beautiful music. So why spend hours and hours on mindless exercises when there's such great music? Now there's some notable exceptions, scales, arpeggios, some octave work, and that's when you put in just a little bit of your time. And how many of you out there, you practice, and then you go to play for people, all hell breaks loose. This is not uncommon, by the way, because the funny thing is you think that you're practicing and then you're ready to perform, but the reality is you have to practice performing. It's one of the pillars. Now I've talked about these pillars. What are these pillars all about, and why is this so essential? Well, you think about the home you're in right now. I've talked about this before. You could have a solid foundation, but if the framing is weak, the whole thing could collapse. Or if the electrical wasn't done right, your house could burn down. If the roof leaks, on and on, your home is only as strong as the weakest pillar. It's the same thing with your piano playing. And knowing how to approach each of these is key to being able to be productive in the work you do on the piano. So I'm going to talk a little bit about starting with how to practice. I want to hear from anybody out there. Has anybody out there been shown specifically step by step how to practice? If so, I'd love to hear from you here in the comments. Let's get a dialogue going. You're going to get the most out of this session today if you involve yourself and let me know what you want out of your practice and out of your piano playing. That's key to being able to get the most done for the time you spend. So number one, know what it is you're wanting to do. Are you just reading the music for fun? Are you playing music just to enjoy it? That's all good. But if you want to really improve your playing or be able to learn music you've always wanted to play before, you need a system of how to practice. I was really fortunate growing up with my father, Robert Estrin, who showed me how to practice at my very first lesson as a young child, as he taught countless people, famous people like Debbie Gibson and Billy Joel, the conductor of the Hollywood Bowl, composers, conductors, all kinds of people, and they all could learn music effectively. When I went to the Manhattan School of Music with a great concert pianist teaching there, my fellow students kept coming up to me asking how I was able to learn so much, and I showed them the step-by-step approach that is so valuable for you. So if we have any questions here, I'd love to hear. As a matter of fact, Florence is here to kind of help a bit with what we've got, any questions we have. So anybody got any good questions for us yet?
So what we have is somebody asking about getting a set routine, and somebody else asking about piano lessons for ADHD people.
You know, one thing that's phenomenal about piano playing, I've discovered this over the years, is that it is effective therapy for many, many different physiological and emotional conditions. Because did you know that playing the piano involves more parts of the brain than any single other activity? This has been documented. Think about it. Long-term and short-term memory, you got the visual, the tactile, the oral, it all comes together. And so therefore, for ADHD, I've had students with these types of conditions, and piano playing is a way to organize, which ties right into the other question about how to organize your practice routine. I sometimes describe it as a big meal. You could have an appetizer of warm-up scales, then you might have a main course of memorization, and then accoutrements of refinement, and then maybe dessert. You get to play your pieces through and do some sight reading. The reason for this, for the variety in your practice, is to keep your mind engaged. Now I'm going to say this right now, a very bold statement. The most important thing as a pianist that we all have to do is to learn music. Think about this. The piano in some ways is the easiest musical instrument of all to get a tone out of. Just try that as a flute. Florence is a flutist. I hear her practice every day, and before she practices any music, she's doing her warm-ups and her long tones. It's all about tone production. I was actually majored in both piano and French horn at the Manhattan School of Music. And there again, I would practice the horn, and if I was in shape on the horn, I could play the music. On the piano, you know, anybody can get a decent sound. The first time they try on the piano, it's really not that hard. But what makes the piano hard is the music. So you must spend the vast majority of your practice time learning music. And the secret to that is being organized. You don't want to try to learn a whole piece at once any more than you sit down to a Thanksgiving dinner and try to eat the whole thing at once. You take little bites, you chew them really well, and you can little by little nourish yourself with your meal as well as your music by not taking more than you can possibly digest at a time. Everybody thinks, now tell me in the chat if you think this is true of you, because I think everybody thinks that piano is uniquely hard for them and it's easier for other people. If you feel that that's you, put that yes in the chat. I can't tell you how many people are surprised that piano is challenging. The beautiful thing is when you accept your own limitations, then you can soar because you can realize how much you can learn at a time and you can tackle just what you can assimilate at a time. So in practicing a piece of music, just reading through it isn't enough. What happens when you read through a piece of music over and over again, unless you can play it perfectly the first time, it's actually what I call anti-practicing. You're actually doing more damage than good. If you want to read through music, read through different stuff. Don't keep reading through the same music over and over again, not the way you want to play it, because it's going to be really, really hard to ever get it to undo the things you didn't like by taking little tiny sections, hands separately, and perfecting them, putting the hands together and going on phrase by phrase. You will soar. You'll be amazed at the productivity of her practice. I'll get into more, but are there any other questions we have here?
So is it really necessary to memorize? I have a bad memory. That's from the same person on two different texts.
You know, my memory, I can sit down and play hours of music for you now, and you think, oh, I must be some kind of musical genius. The reality is, it's like, oh, where did I put my reading glasses? You know, I'm just like anybody else. But I had the good fortune of learning how to memorize. It's not an automatic process. Are there people with photographic memories? Yeah, like, I don't know, 1 in 1,000 people can just look at a score and remember it. Instead, by taking tiny amounts, you can memorize. But getting back to, is it necessary to memorize? No, it's not. And for certain types of music, it's absolutely not helpful at all. If you were playing in an orchestra or a band, you're a part of an ensemble, of course you don't memorize that. You're part of everything. Or if you're accompanying people, you want to see the other parts with chamber music and such. So, even then, having an organized approach, just reading through the whole thing over and over is not effective. Taking little section by little section, hands separately when necessary to iron things out, putting it together, and paying attention to all the details. You don't want to try to put some of the details in later because you're going to get used to playing things that are wrong, and undoing what you've gotten used to doing is the hardest thing. Tell me in the chat, anybody, if you've learned music and learned something that was wrong, a mistake, a fingering, a phrasing, notes, a rhythm, anything, how hard it is to ever get rid of it. How would you like to never have to go through that process again, ever? And every time you sit down at the piano, you only learn to play what you want it to sound like eventually, even if it's under tempo. If you think that's something you'd like to do, put a yes in the chat. That yes, you would like to learn how to never have to face unlearning something you've learned wrong before. Because that is key to productivity, because you can spend vast amounts of time trying to undo habits that have gotten ingrained. It's time to put an end to that. Now, reading has a completely different methodology. If you're, for example, you're at a party and maybe it's a kid's party and there's just some elementary music and everyone has to do a sing-along, and it's simple music that it's just within your reading level, you're not going to have time to practice. How do you approach such a thing? Now, when you first look at music, how many of you look at music to read and you think, it's impossible, you can't even understand how anybody could read all those notes? If you feel like that, put a yes in the chat. Yes, that's me. Because there's a lot of people who can't even fathom how it's possible. And here's the secret. The secret is they're not reading everything. What? How can they play what they're not reading? Think about this. When people first learn how to read, when you were a young child, first learning how to read English, you were sounding out every letter of every word, and it was a slow slog. Eventually, you just recognize words. You don't look at every letter, you just read the words, and you even read groups of words. You naturally can assume what's coming next by the logic, by an understanding. That's exactly what you do with music. You don't look at every single note, you recognize patterns, you recognize chords. Now here's where music theory, another pillar. Theory and technique work hand in hand with improving your reading, your playing, and your learning. It goes hand in hand with all of these. Any more questions out there?
So we got a question. What suggestions do you have for a senior first-time piano student?
This can be phenomenally rewarding for you because it enables you to use parts of the brain that you've not used before, and it's fantastic mental exercise and enjoyable. I would say to get the best possible training you can, because if you just go there and try to wing it on your own, you're likely to fail. You need a little bit of hand-holding. I'm going to tell everybody right here, I've got resources for you right in the description. They're the Piano Pillars Mastery Guide. And for those of you who really care about your piano playing, I do mentorships with a limited number of people. And if you'd like a strategy session to see what that's about and how to take your playing to the next level, I have a limited number of times available. Check them out while they're still there for you. So there's a lot to this. Now, one of the things is how many of you, like I asked before, get nervous and everything falls apart when you try to play for people? This is so common. And how do you battle such a thing? Well, there's a number of ways. One way, of course, the prerequisite is preparation. Prepare like crazy. Make sure that you can play the piece any way you're likely to try it. But that's not enough. Another thing you can do is to practice performing. Set up your phone across the room and record yourself and pretend it's a performance. Then work up to playing for one person, two people, little by little. What's going to happen is you're going to realize as soon as you start to play, it feels completely different. How many of you had this experience where you try to play for somebody and it doesn't feel anything like playing by yourself, even if you're doing it on your piano at home? Have you felt this way? I know this is so common. And you must think about playing for people. If it's going to be happening, think about it in advance. Don't block it out and try to pretend the audience isn't there. Embrace them. Take that energy to inspire you, to propel you to do things you've never done before. So each one of these pillars has its own methodology. In the Piano Pillars Mastery Guide, I touch on all of them for you. And so, any other questions out there? I'm going to spend as much time, by the way, as much time as it takes to answer all your questions. Don't be afraid to ask your questions. So what else do we have?
So for hands separately, someone's asking how long on each hand?
You should get to the point where you can play it absolutely perfectly with repetitions and fluency and ease, where you can play it again and again and again. You get to the point where you can play right hand alone perfectly, left hand alone perfectly, right hand perfectly, left hand perfectly. Then the key, the reason for all of that is putting the hands together is the hardest part. If piano was one hand, it would be the easiest instrument out there, wouldn't it? So at that point, slow things down to less than half the tempo. I'm not kidding. This is the one part that if you've never done this before, you will overestimate the ease that you're going to have putting the hands together. Since it's the hardest part, get each hand separate to the excruciatingly fluid. And if you can't get hands separately really, really good, then you're working on music that's too hard for you. Because if each hand is a struggle, you're not going to be able to put the hands together with any kind of security. So the good news about piano is the repertoire is vast. Not everything has to be virtuosic, you know? There's lots of music that's beautiful, you know, from Chopin, simpler Chopin music to Bergmüller studies. I mean, what about, you know, beautiful Bergmüller? What's so great, once you get the system of practice mastered, where you know the steps and how to work through the pillars, you will be able to elevate. You'll be able to learn. Instead of taking 6 months to learn a piece, you can take a couple of weeks to learn a piece that would have taken you months. This is not an exaggeration. I have proof of this. There was been so many people who came to me, and Noel came to me, and he had struggled working months to learn a single piece. And after working through the pillar system, he was able to learn pieces in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks tops that would have taken him months just from knowing how to break things down. Start with something, any piece. You shouldn't have to take 6 months to learn a piece of music unless it's a Rachmaninoff concerto or something really extended, a 40-minute work. Instead, take a piece that will take you no longer than 1 to 3 weeks to learn, or if it's a multi-movement work, each movement shouldn't take you longer than that to learn. If it does, it's likely music that you should wait till later to learn. Here's the thing, you might think, well, I don't want to do those other pieces. I really want to do Clair de Lune or Liszt Liebestrom or something like that. Well, here's the thing. Let's say you worked on Clair de Lune and 9 months later it's starting to come together. Well, if you had started with Bergmüller and you learned several of those, each one taking you a week or two, and then you got on to some Heller, some Clementi, so maybe the Mozart K545 C major sonata, you could progress and progress. And 9 months later, you might be on that level. And then you have all this music you've mastered, and you've gotten used to the process, and you've developed a repertoire of music you can play on a high level. If you don't have anything you can whip off at a high level, that's the first order of business, finding a piece that's suitable, that you can have the satisfaction. Now, why memorize music at all, you might wonder? Any of you who've memorized music, do you find it liberating, not having to look up here and down here, just being able to play the music with freedom? It's so much more enjoyable to play from memory. That's the reason. It frees you. Plus, the music is with you all the time. You can be waiting in line at the bank thinking through a score, and you're essentially practicing even when you're not at the piano. You know, what does it mean to learn something? People say, I learned it, but I don't have it memorized. And one of the funny things I often do is like, Florence, ask me what my name is. Go ahead, ask me.
What's your name?
What's my name? Oh, I know my name. I know my name. My name is Robert Estrin. Do I know my name? I mean, what does it mean to know something? It means to have it in your head, to have it memorized. And the experience, if you've never been taught how to memorize, then don't think that you can't do it. You can. I have shown countless people, if this is something important to you, go ahead and do a strategy session in the description. I want to show you that you can memorize. Yes, you can. I know right now you're going, no, not me. Yes, you. You can memorize. I know so many people I have worked with who thought they could never memorize, who can memorize. Now, is memorization easy? No, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. So, why would you want to do that? Make your practice hard so your performing is easy or easier. And the beautiful thing is you don't have to spend your whole practice session memorizing. It's like an assembly line. You memorize at first, and then, days later, you've got different sections and different stages of development. The things that you learned last week are already polished, and then yet you're still carving out new material to put in the pipeline, and then you've got all the various stages of development of other sections that you keep improving to the point of diminishing returns. Here's the thing. I know that I'm really busy, and when I sit down at the piano, I want to get something done every single minute. When you take large sections of music and play through it, your mind could be wandering. You could be half focusing in. If you're playing 2 measures of music, one hand, you'll know if you're concentrating or you're not concentrating. Or when you're working on a 4-measure phrase, trying to get it perfectly 3 times in a row, it's a quantifiable practice strategy so that you can get something done every minute of your practice. How many of you out there would like to have a system for practicing so you know exactly what to do? Put a yes in the chat. Yes, that's me. I want to know how to practice effectively, because I can tell you this. That is the most important thing that will change your playing. You might have the most brilliant teacher in the world, and you'll get all pumped up and you love your lessons, and then you get home and you go, oh, they said to practice. What should I do first? Oh, I'll just play through my piece. Oh, that wasn't that good. Let me play it again. Maybe it'll get better. And again, the playing, and it doesn't seem to improve. How many of you fight that? Does this start making sense to you? How many of you feel this way? Any more questions here?
Well, actually, I just wanted to add something to what you were saying about when people want to play a piece that's above their level. The problem is that you're not able to play it on a high level. And then the other thing I think that correlates with everybody saying, why is it when I get in front of somebody else and try to play, suddenly I can't play at all? Because maybe you never really could play the piece on a high enough level to begin with. So my thought is, what you're saying is start with the pieces that are appropriate level, and it builds your confidence to such a degree. And you know, I mean, I think I was the victim of having teachers that gave me pieces that were too hard for me at a certain stage in my development, and that really hurt my confidence, because I always felt like there's nothing I can really play great. And then suddenly when I eventually overcame it and became a professional musician. And when I started teaching, I realized that there was a whole wealth of music that I had never studied that would have been so appropriate during that time where I had no confidence.
It's a temptation for students and teachers alike to try to delve into repertoire that's too advanced for your own good. Now, I know, of course, why students will do it. You love the music, you really want to play it, and you think, I'll just do it, instead of like all the formative steps. It's like you want to run a marathon, and you say, I'm just going to do it. You run out and run a marathon, and you haven't been running before. You know, obviously, you can see where that would be setting yourself up for failure. You want to work your way up. It's exactly the same thing with piano. And just like Florence mentioned, it's so strong when you can play a piece well with confidence, and you can express your music and your love for the music. And like I said, other instruments have a hard time with this, because the repertoire on piano is greater than the solo repertoire for piano. When I say solo repertoire, I mean solo, just piano, is vastly larger than all other instruments combined. As a matter of fact, even the solo repertoire with piano accompaniment, if you added violin and trumpet and French horn, and it's just so vast. You don't have to resort to playing great music that is above your level. There's great music on your level, and a lot of it. And you will love the experience of playing it, being able to play it up to tempo, playing with security, getting the voicing you want, the tone out of the piano, and to have that feeling. And the beautiful thing is, from there, it's a step-by-step approach, just like preparing for a marathon or anything else. The steps involved. So, getting back to these pillars, the learning pillar has all the steps involved, the reading pillars, the technique and theory, and of course, performing. It's got the steps also. How many of you would love to know the steps involved in each of these pillars to get your playing on the next level? If that sounds like you, put a yes in the chat. I want to help each and every one of you. That's why I'm offering free what I thought about selling for a very large sum, my Piano Pillars Mastery Guide. I'm giving it away for the people who are here today, because I want you to get what I've been so fortunate to literally grow up with my family, as well as studying with some world-class teachers from John Ogden, Ruth Stenchinska, master classes at the Mozarteum in Salzburg, and with Byron Janis, so much. And I thought I would share this with you, and for people who are really serious, and these strategy sessions could be a game changer for you. So, what else do we have, Florence? I know they're coming fast and furious.
Yeah, for a little bit ago, back to the hands separately, somebody's asking, is it important to pick out each voice and play each voice separately, as in Schubert?
Now, that is really an intelligent question. I really thank you for that one. When you're starting out and music is on the simple side, it's just like clockwork. Right hand alone, left hand alone, together, boom, next section, same way, connect the sections, and it's neat and tidy. When you're studying more complex music, sometimes you have inner voices that are divided with the hands. Think about, for example, like the scenes from childhood, for example. You've got the inner voices are divided between the hands. You see how the voices are divided between the hands? So you actually have a treble part, a bass part, and the inner part. So yes, practicing the parts of a fugue, for example, you have an inner voice and a 3 or 4 voice fugue, and being aware of the inner lines, very important. You can still practice hands separately, but then you should take note of these inner voices. A great way to practice a piece like this is in chords. In fact, anytime your music, write this one down. Anytime your music can be reduced to chords, learn in chords first. Whether it's a Mozart sonata, or in the case of this Schumann Kindersingen, Scenes from Childhood. So helpful to have those inner voices. And how do you delineate them? How do you get it not to sound like this? Your thumbs are your strongest fingers, and they're right in the middle, and you want to hear the outer voices, which are your weakest fingers. This, by the way, is a fundamental challenge of piano playing. And I've talked about this technique of practicing with different articulations. So if you play the treble and the bass legato and the inner voices with a gentle finger staccato, your hand learns which notes and which voices, and you can control them then with volume instead of articulations. So this is the practice technique. And that's what enables you to play So you see, there's a lot to this. There's so many interesting practice techniques that go beyond. These pillars are the foundation to build your piano playing. It's knowing which pillar you're working on and how to combine them to get your performing solid. And I'd love to hear any more questions anybody has.
Okay, as an experienced player, how does it feel to you with experience when you are improvising?
That's such a great question. I improvise all the time. I love to improvise, and the crazy thing about it is, unlike jazz artists, pop, new age, who have frameworks, most of my improvisation that I love to do is just free-form improvisation, and it can be wildly divergent. And I love it when I'm in the zone and I just feel where it's going and I have this architecture. Sometimes, though, it's so easy to get hung up on thinking about what you're doing instead of just getting into that state of flow. And that's what I enjoy most, is when I'm just allowing it to unfold without judging. What sometimes is so hard is that I sit there with the piano and just do whatever. And sometimes I'll do something and it will be so beautiful, and then I go, I would record this. And by the time I hook things up and everything, the mood is lost. It's so hard to be inspired on demand. And sometimes things just flow, and I love that. That's my favorite thing. And by the way, this isn't just for improvisation. This is one of the essentials of performing. While it is necessary to have that part of you looking down on yourself like a loving parent, making sure you don't get carried away, you don't want to fall off the bench in your enthusiasm, literally, or take a tempo you've never done in practice, or take a wrong turn in a repeat in a sonata form, yet you want to let yourself go and just get into the natural state of the flow. So there's a balance, the yin-yang of performing, allowing yourself to have the freedom to express yourself without getting so carried away that you're self-indulgent or you lose track of what you can possibly do. Same thing with improvisation. You want to have some kind of framework. You don't want to intellectualize too much, but you don't want to lose track of what you're doing either. There's a balance to performing in this regard. And number one is you've got to get rid of your ego. And you have to remember when you're performing, it's not about you. It's about the people listening to you. And they're going to enjoy you as long as you're enjoying yourself. When you get uptight and you're worried about what's coming next, they feel that same tension. And it's not fun for them. They don't like it. So you want to just let yourself go and just have that little bit of that higher consciousness that doesn't interrupt. It's like a loving parent letting the child discover the world, but preventing danger. That's the best explanation I have for that. Are there more?
Yes.
Well, let's let them rip. Yeah, we're getting somewhere. How many of you are enjoying this out there? If you're enjoying this out there, give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat. I want to know that you're getting something from this. So what do we have?
Okay. How do I stop giving ghost notes and unwanted accents on an unregulated piano when playing pianissimo scales?
I wish there was an easy answer. You have to get your piano serviced. I mean, really?
Well,
it's hard enough.
Maybe it's in a venue where they're trying to play.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, oh, well, that brings up that issue. Even on a well-regulated piano, it's a challenge, and there are techniques I could talk about briefly, and then I'm going to get back to this, how to deal with a bad piano. I think I have a video on that subject. Well, on a well-regulated piano, as long as you push the key from the top to the bottom in one motion, it will always play, no matter how delicately you play. But that wasn't the question, was it? So let's get back to the question. What do you do when the piano is out of regulation? Or how about the voicing? I just played this Yamaha this morning that was so bright, it was like listening to metal. It didn't have any warmth at all. It was just, I don't know what the deal is with that piano. It needs major servicing. And what happens when you play on such an instrument in a performance or at somebody's home or anything, or if your piano at home is like that? This is one of the great challenges of being a piano player or a concert pianist or piano player of any level, is that, like, Florence is a flutist, so she can take her instrument wherever she goes. My daughter is a violinist, same thing there. But as a pianist, you have to instantly adjust to whatever piano is there. And the key is the key to 90% of piano playing, which is listening. Listening is the key. It's the answer. It's not just getting the feel for how something goes. It's listening and creating something new. Now, if notes physically aren't playing and one key to the next has no consistency, good luck with that. I mean, you could take your playing level up a little bit so those ghost notes don't occur as much. It's going to be a compromise, and you have to figure out what that compromise is for that specific piano. Whether it's a harsh tone, lightening up your playing, maybe engaging the soft pedal, maybe closing the piano, closing the lid. There are many things, and by the way, this doesn't just go for pianos, it goes for much more than that. The room acoustics enter into things. One of the real big challenges is when you're playing in a hall and you get a chance sometimes to try out your performance before the audience gets there, and you go, oh, this sounds great. You hear this beautiful, lush reverb of the space. Now, this is particularly true in smaller venues where the bodies, the people coming in and their clothing absorbs the sound, and it feels completely different. And before you felt heroic, like you could do anything, you were like Superman, because you'd play the piano and you get this big, echoey response, and now all the bodies absorb the sound, and once again, you just tried that piano that afternoon, and here you are that evening, and everything feels and sounds totally different. Again, adjusting and not trying to overplay the instrument. And the same thing with the piano that's really harsh in tone. Take everything down. You have to adjust. And also, it's not just the piano, it's not just the acoustics, it's the people you're playing for. You had it all set in your mind what you were going to do, and you were going to take a slow movement, or this one piece you want to play really, really delicately and quietly because you could get such beautiful expression. And you're in the audience, and the ventilation system kicks in, and the audience, the rustling of the feet and everything, you realize that if you play that quietly, they're not going to hear you past the middle of the audience. Same thing in somebody's home. You go to play their piano, and everything sounds totally different. And then maybe there's some noisy kids around. You're going to have to take everything up a level. Or it could be exactly the opposite. You're playing and you want to get their attention, sometimes flipping it and playing more quietly so that they become aware of the fact, the few people who are distracting everybody else, they become really noticeable when you take the volume down, and then people around them go, they want to hear it. And so this is the beautiful thing about performing, that I love about performing. Every performance is a unique experience. At that moment in time, what you can do with it. And that is what is fantastic. Let's see. It looks like we're having some technical issues here. It says I'm offline. Hopefully we come back here. This is strange.
Mm-hmm.
Some technical...
Somebody said the link isn't working.
Oh,
the
my
Pillars
goodness.
link. That was a while ago.
That is interesting.
Wait. Well, somebody just added something.
Okay. So I don't know if we're having some technical issues. I've got the fastest internet available here, and I'd like to think that it works. Anyway, I hope that everybody can hear me. I don't know what's going on with the internet. I usually have a good stable connection here. So anyway, every performance is a unique experience. So I'm just going to check this to make sure we're in good shape. Not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. What? I prepared so much for this day for you.
Somebody said fine now.
It's fine now. Okay. Well, we're going to continue here.
Got a little stuttery, but never stopped.
All right. So going back to this, a performance is a unique moment in time when you can reach people on a personal level. It's the most wonderful experience of the world, as long as you're prepared. And my job is to prepare you, which is why I'm having this time where I can answer your questions. You can get the Piano Pillars Mastery Guide, and for the select few who really want to take your playing to the next level, set a session with me, a strategy session, also in the description. So getting back to why is it so important to accomplish so much in your piano practice? Well, think about this. A pilot has a checklist. They go through every single thing on that aircraft just before taking off to make sure. Why? Because people's lives are at stake. Now, what does this have to do with your piano practice? It has everything to do with your piano practice. What is your life but your time? And if you are wasting your time sitting at the piano working and accomplishing nothing, or potentially doing destructive repetitions, ingraining something that you're going to have to spend countless hours trying to undo later, you're throwing your precious time on this planet away on something that you're not enjoying and is going to make more work for you later. My job with everybody I work with is to maximize the effectiveness of the time you spend at the piano so you can enjoy your playing and enjoy accomplishment at the instrument. How many of you think this makes sense and would like to have that for you in your playing? If so, let me know in the chat if I'm giving you what you need here. Any more, anytime there's any questions, you can just let me know.
Okay. How does Horowitz create his special sound?
I had the unique opportunity of studying with somebody who was good friends with Vladimir Horowitz, Constance Keene, a great pianist at the Manhattan School of Music. And she socialized with him all the time, and I got many, many insights and got to hear him live on several occasions, both from far away and close up. So I've got real reflections for you. Number one, the Horowitz piano. How many of you out there have heard about the Horowitz piano? The Horowitz's piano was not a normal piano. I mean, it was a doctored instrument. What his piano had done to it was the key travel was more shallow, for one thing, making it possible to play very, very rapidly with ease. It was a very light action, and the hammers were really, really hard. So that when he much as blew on the keys, it was an explosive sound. So his technique, counterintuitively, wasn't this huge power like, for example, Richter. You listen to Richter's playing, that man was just like a monster what he could do with a piano. Horowitz, it was the control he had, that he could play so delicately that anytime he wanted power, he just pushed a finger a little harder and get an explosive sound. So he had a different type of technique. And he also would use different parts of his finger to get different tonal shadings. Unlike what the vast majority of pianists do to create a beautiful singing line, using the arm weight of leaning heavier and heavier into the middle of the phrase and lighter on the end of a phrase to get a round phrase, Horowitz did things very, very differently that it's almost impossible to imitate, try as you might. He utilized the natural decay of the piano sound in these little strategic places within a phrase in order to craft the illusion of a line. Now you might say, an illusion of a line? Well, guess what? Anybody who plays the piano, if you're getting a singing line, it's an illusion. The proof of that is very simple. That's all you got, folks. It's gone almost immediately. So when you're getting a singing line, it's by being able to create this illusion. And as I mentioned, using the arm weight is one way of achieving that, to be able to get a smooth crescendo, decrescendo. Now that is a traditional, really great way of creating a musical line. The weight of the arm, the control of inner voices with the technique I showed you earlier. That's without the pedal, and that's the way to practice to get that, and leaning the weight of the arm, and the weight grows in the middle of the phrase, and the weight dies at the end of the phrase. Particularly challenging when you have lower notes within the same hand and a different dynamic. But getting back to Horowitz, Horowitz was a completely different technique, by and large. And I'm going to demonstrate, even though this is not a piece that I've ever heard Horowitz play, I'm not sure if he plays this A-flat Waltz of Chopin, but I love to play this, and the voicing is kind of inspired from what I learned from listening to Horowitz, hearing him up close and hearing him from far away, knowing how he was able to achieve the kind of voicing. Listen to what I do with the long notes. The long notes have to be articulated with more energy because they have to last longer. So you have to play longer notes with more energy than shorter notes in order to make them sound equal. If you ever want to understand this intuitively, try playing your piano pieces on an organ where the notes don't fade out, and suddenly it'll be a revelation for you of how the piano tone is so dramatically different from other instruments. So I'm going to play the longer notes with more energy and let them melt into the next notes. So at the point of the diminishing sound, the natural decay of the note, the long notes, the next note is going to be right at that level to give us the smoothness. So, I'm also using the pedal judiciously because you can get a swell out of certain notes on the pedal depending upon when you engage the pedal. Playing the note with no pedal. Now playing the pedal before I even play the note would give a whooshy kind of sound. Or putting the pedal down right after the initial attack to get a very sustained sound. So there are all ways of accomplishing tonal shadings by using the arm weight, listening to longer notes, filling them up with more sound, just like on a wind instrument, filling with more air. Incidentally, I don't know how many of you out there play a wind instrument or sing or play a bowed instrument, but it's so instructive, and I can tell you that doing one of those things will be a groundbreaking revelations in your piano playing to understand what a musical line really is about. Because the piano is an instrument of illusion, and you have to understand what you're trying to imitate. So if you don't play any other instrument, at least sing your music so you can get the sense of the line and the breath. You want to get the sense of that to get the organic quality. It's amazing that piano can do all it can do, because did you know that the piano is a percussion instrument? I have a funny story about that, how the piano is a percussion instrument. When I was in 3rd grade, I had a great general music teacher, and I had just started playing the piano, but I loved to play. I've always loved to perform. So she would sometimes let me play for the class at the end of the class, and I loved to do it. And there was one class that we were learning about the groups of instruments, the family of instruments: strings, brass, woodwind, and percussion. And the whole class was about that. And I said, "Oh, what can I play for?" And she said, "Oh, I don't think we're going to have time today. I don't think. Oh, I really want to play. I was begging her, please let me play." And we get to the end of the class. She goes, "Well, okay, if you can tell the class what family of instruments the piano is in, then I'll let you play." And so I stopped, and it wasn't I was like so smart. The way she asked me, I knew it wasn't going to be the obvious answer, stringed instrument. So I said, percussion, because I thought the strings are hit with hammers. And the look of shock on her face when I got that, you cannot even believe it. And she had to let me play. So I got my performance in. So that is the fact of what makes the piano such a challenging instrument in order to get a singing line. And what do people love about the piano so much is being able to play beautiful. And to get the sense of the breath. So it's all about having the concept of the fluid line. Now there are of course exceptions to this. There are some pieces that are purely percussive, like this piece by Pinto. So it's not always. That's the beautiful thing about the piano. It's a percussion instrument and it's also a lyrical instrument. So, do we have any more questions?
Oh, yes.
We have more. My goodness, this is fantastic. I hope all of you enjoy this. If you're enjoying this, give me a yes in the chat if you're glad you came here today, all right? And by the way, this is going on tomorrow and Wednesday, same time. So come on back. I'd love to have all of you. Tell your friends, by the way, if anybody plays the piano, this is for them as well.
So, what is the best way to get to grips with polyrhythms, particularly the more difficult ones?
Polyrhythms, yeah. You start off with 3 against 2. One of the great things, first of all, if you have something like in Chopin, it's something like that. Let me change cameras here. If you have something like, like what do you do? This is like, it's not divisible. What is it? 20 against 12 or something? I don't even remember the math right now. Anyway, it's not divisible. So what you do with something like that is to divide it up as close as you can, and then later allow it to each hand to be independent. So for that, I would learn it. You find a way to divide it as close as possible, like 3, 3, 3, 4, or something like that. Now, and then you let it have some freedom. If you're talking about something like a 5 against 3 or a 3 against 4, now here's a little bit different because it's more quantifiable. 3 against 2 is easy because it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's divisible by just dividing up to 6. Now, theoretically, you could do that with 3 against 4, but you'd be counting so many subdivisions and it would never really be very useful. A great technique, let's say, for example, Debussy, Children's Corner Suite, the fourth movement, The Snow is Dancing. Now maybe you're wondering how you're going to do against that 3 against 4. And a great technique is to play one hand up here and one hand down there. Because you can hear what is happening with each hand. When you play the hands together, sometimes it's hard to know. The first time you do a 3 against 4, for example, or a 5 against 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 against 3, for example. You might not be able to hear it well, so you play 1. Then you reverse it. So that is a great technique by isolating the hands where you hear 1. The natural tendency and the way to make the rhythms pop for yourselves is realize that the beat you accent should be the beginning of the group. What happens, like somebody tries 3 against 4 and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, trying to fit that 3. So instead, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So realize that the groups of notes, how you emphasize the first note of each group in each hand is going to help you to get the feel of the rhythm. That along with playing one on the piano, one on top of the piano. You can start just by tapping in your lap. Like there's 4. And then you can do one on the piano, one on your lap. Those are great ways of tackling polyrhythms. Great questions. And we have time for a few more questions.
Yeah, could you explain how the great romantics like Paderewski differed to, say, that of Rubenstein?
Okay, are you talking about the composer Anton Rubenstein? By the way, Arthur Rubenstein, you're probably referring to, when he was a young man, everybody would say, Rubenstein, no, you're talking about the great Rubenstein? And that was Anton Rubenstein, who was a phenomenal 19th century pianist. Incidentally, my father has a CD of Rubenstein, a whole CD of Anton Rubenstein's works, and they're wonderful pieces of music. They are on YouTube. I put them on there if you want to hear what his playing was like. Okay, Paderewski versus Rubenstein. Now, of course, Rubenstein lived a very, very long life. And for those of you who have ever explored his early recordings, he was a dramatically different pianist in his younger years than when he was older as a recording artist. I did get an opportunity to hear Rubenstein live, which was a thrilling experience when I was a pretty young child. Now, Rubenstein had a concept of recording. I in some ways believe that Rubenstein was the first modern pianist in some respects, because his recordings were nothing like his live performances, particularly his performances in the 1930s and earlier. He was a flamboyant, wild, a very spontaneous performer, and anything would happen, there was fire. And what happened was Horowitz happened, and Rubenstein and the rest of the piano world kind of went back to the drawing board trying to figure out how to play the piano, because the bar was just raised to such a level. And in the case of Rubenstein, what he did was, in his recording legacy, he made the conscious decision to make his performances kind of like something in a museum under glass that would be a good foundational performance that would be a model for how the piece should be played, rather than a one-off inspired performance, which Paderewski and Itzhak Friedman and Hoffman, Levine, Rachmaninoff, so many of those pre-World War II pianists, Cortot, Schnabel. My goodness, listen to those recordings. You'll fall off your chair. The variety of musical expression and interpretation is spellbinding. We have nothing like that today, really. And I have reasons why this is the case. Think back then, people didn't hear other pianists except whoever they could, go to a concert. Recording was in its infancy. Therefore, everyone had their own individualized approach to playing the piano. Now, the advent of recording changed all of that in 2 fundamental ways. Number one, everybody got to hear more players. So, I grew up with records, and my father had a big record collection, so I could hear Brendel and Horowitz, Richter, Rubenstein, Weisenberg, Moravitz, on and on, Polini, just everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people. Now, something else happened at that time, at the advent of the LP, which is tape editing also, because the recordings were initially made on reel-to-reel tape, and they could be edited to get note-perfect performances. Because who wants to hear a performance that the same note is missed all the time? In a live performance, it comes and goes. It's not a big deal if there's a cracked note here or there. But on a recording, you don't want that. Well, for a performer to play absolutely perfectly, the recording session would have to be arduously long, and they might lose the spark. So editing was done, but it's not like you edited, oh, you missed this note, we're going to put this note in. That's not the way editing has ever worked. Editing is a matter of, oh, this is a great performance of this 10-minute movement. It's a shame that you missed a couple of notes in the recapitulation, so they put the first part in and the recapitulation from another take, boom, covered. And there could even be more editing than that. But obviously, the pianist has to be able to play everything. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is that it's really sad that everybody's grown up thinking that it should be perfect. So what happened? Everybody now today is expected to play perfectly. That wasn't the case years ago. Pianists used to miss notes, and it wasn't a big deal as long as it wasn't so many notes that it destroyed the flow of the performance. Listen to Schnabel. I mean, Schnabel, one of the great musicians of the 20th century. Did he play note perfectly? No, but he also recorded all 32 Beethoven sonatas, with the first person to ever do that. And I dare you to find anybody who's recorded the complete set of Beethoven that tops Schnabel. There are some great volumes of them, Barenboim and others. But the fact of the matter is that pianists back then had much more individualistic approach to the piano, including Paderewski. Rubenstein in his early years also typified that style of playing, and in later years, in his recordings, went for the more modern approach. So that's my take on that. And so what else do we have here?
Okay, is it permissible to have a very subtle down pressure of the hand while playing a legato scale to help with evenness? I find this works for me, but it goes against the usual rule of not pushing down.
It depends upon how fast you're playing. And in slow playing in general, to get a smooth melodic line like I talked about earlier, using the weight of the arm is necessary in order to get a fluid connection of volume from note to note. In scales, I would recommend, when practicing slow scales, first of all, there's never a good reason not to use the metronome when practicing scales. There's not one reason to not use the metronome, because it's going to measure. Scales are about measuring your work. So when you're playing a slow scale, raised, rounded fingers. Going all the way up and all the way down. Am I using weight? A little bit of weight, but the important thing is to get fingers that are not playing up and out of the way, because it's the release of notes that's so difficult when playing fast finger work. Pushing down keys is way easier. I've demonstrated this on the piano. Try to lift up fingers separately from one another is way harder than pushing fingers down. So you must practice the lifting up by doing the slow practice. As you get faster in scales, it's absolutely necessary to lighten up. If you're using arm weight when playing scales fast, you're not going to be able to support that kind of weight. You have to lighten up. Is there some arm weight? There isn't really a heck of a lot of arm weight. Now, there are different types of touches, like that was the legato, but you can also... There's also detached. The space between the notes is the hardest part about scales and arpeggios. Getting evenly spaced notes. When you hear a great pianist, sometimes it's almost like jewels. You ever get that sense with a cadenza that the notes are just so perfectly even? It's not just the placement of the attacks, it's the releases and the spaces between notes that creates that beautiful jewel-like evenness. So I would say in slow scales, some arm weight maybe isn't a problem, but as you get faster, you really want to just float your hand above the keys, or it's going to inhibit your speed and fluency at the instrument.
So there seem to be a few people, because they can't, for some reason, the Piano Pillars Guide is not downloading for them. So I don't know if you have a suggestion that they email you so you could send it to them or something after this.
That's interesting. Yeah, you can shoot me an email if that's not working for you. I can't imagine.
There's been more than one person said that.
My goodness.
It's not downloading.
It should actually just populate. Once you fill out the form, it should be right there for you. All right?
Okay, and then this is a quick question that I'm pumping up to the top here before some others. What piano are you playing right now?
All right. This is an interesting story. My father's father, my grandfather, bought this in the late 1930s, bought this Steinway Model S for my father. And they had monthly payments, and they were struggling, and there were times they nearly lost this piano. This piano then, when I went to the Manhattan School of Music, this piano came with me. It was my practice piano in Bloomington, Indiana, where I got a degree in piano performance there. And then it went to my sister for many years. And then we rebuilt it, and my sister enjoyed it for years. And I ended up with my father's 7-foot Baldwin. When we moved here to the Waterloo Arts District in Cleveland, my sister lives across town here, and I needed a piano that was small enough to get up the stairs for this studio. Downstairs we have concert grand, 7-foot pianos, all sorts of pianos. I've got 60 pianos, so I have no shortage of instruments to practice on, but I needed a small piano, so we swapped pianos, so I now have my father's Steinway, my sister has my father's 7-foot Baldwin. And that's the story. And I have an interesting video, by the way, my personal pianos, that you should check out, because I articulated all the pianos I've literally lived with. Not every piano I've had, because that would be thousands of pianos, because I started selling pianos when after graduating from music conservatory, because I had so many people asking for lessons who didn't have pianos. That's how I got into selling pianos. But I'm just talking about the pianos that were my personal pianos, and there were like, I don't know, a dozen or more. And there's a recurring theme of Baldwin L's, and there's double B, Mason and Hamlin, SD10 concert grand Baldwin, actually a couple of concert grand Baldwins. It's a Steinways. There's a whole heck of a lot of piano in my piano history, and I know a lot of people enjoy that video because it gives a personal reflection. So I really enjoy all these questions. If we have any more.
Yeah, we have a couple more.
Yeah.
How come Glenn Gould played with curved wrists when the recommendation for playing Bach is flat wrists?
It's so interesting that both Glenn Gould and Horowitz tended to sit low, and it seemed like, it was like playing like this, and that doesn't work for most people. And generally speaking, at the piano, the ideal position at the piano is with the arms parallel to the floor, which mine roughly are. I used to sit a bit higher. I sit a little bit lower than I used to sit. And that is really what's comfortable for most people. However, one size does not fit all. Think about how the different in physiology. For example, my father, Morton Estrin, was a phenomenal pianist, and he would perform the complete Rachmaninoff preludes at Lincoln Center. Can you imagine that? The complete Opus 32, Opus 23, and the Opus 3 number 2. His recording, by the way, of the Opus 32 is on YouTube. And for any of you who know these pieces or love these pieces, or anybody who loves Rachmaninoff, check it out. It's phenomenal. His hand was so big. How big was it, you're asking? He could reach this chord with one hand. A D flat major chord, D flat, F, A flat, D flat, F. He could, and Rachmaninoff wrote that chord because Rachmaninoff's hands were that big. Now my hands are much, much smaller. My father, in order to get power at the piano, all he had to do, if he wanted power, was use his forearms. He never had to use more than that. Now, take on the other side, Ruth Slenczynska. She, less than 100 pounds, and when she would want a fortissimo out of the piano, she would use her entire arms like this That's the way, and get a huge sound out of the piano. As well as the delicacy, you know, it wasn't just power, the whole range of expression, just like my father can get beautiful tenderness with his massive hands. So everybody has their own physiology. You have to find what works for you. Some people, you'll see, will use their entire bodies in order to get the power out of the piano. You see people sometimes, you know, and there are generalities as to what works on the piano, but you have to find what works for you. Everybody has different physiology, but the vast majority of people, it's not just having the arms parallel to the floor, but how far away from the piano you sit. Notice where I am and the angle of my arms. A good rule of thumb is if when you go like this, you're sitting the right distance. If you're sitting where you can't put your arms straight in front of you like this, then you're sitting too close. Now you might wonder, why are you so far away? Well, you don't want the bench, first of all, up against the back of your shins, because it inhibits you. So you want the bench back and sit at the edge of the bench. And the reason why you don't want to be close is when you're playing from one end of the piano to the other, from here to here, think what this angle would be like. If I was closer, I couldn't get the angle. So you need to be far enough away that you can reach all ends of the keyboard. And by the way, something that you never want to do is slide on the bench. You don't slide back and forth in order to reach notes, because what are you going to do when you're playing? You'd be going crazy back and forth. Find the central location on the keyboard and plant yourself there at the right distance, and you're going to have great results in your piano playing. We do have time for if there's any more.
First, I just want to tell you a comment. There is somebody there that can play that chord, but says that it's hard for them to play gently, and they spend a lot of time working on playing quietly with controls, so it might help with stretches, but it comes with its downside.
Interestingly, I just had the experience of playing the Athena narrow keys piano. It's the first digital piano with smaller keys. And even on that piano, which has the 5.5, which is an inch shorter per octave, a standard piano like this is 6.5 inches per octave. Well, the Athena narrow keys is only 5.5 inches per octave, and even on that piano, I can't reach that chord. Now, you mentioned the difficulty. My father, in order to play fast and light, his big fingers couldn't possibly fit between the black keys of a piano. And that is one of the challenges for pianists with really large hands. For me, fast and light with my hands, that's easy. And you know, Joseph Hoffman, listen to Joseph Hoffman with his small hands. Did you know that Joseph Hoffman's, and I don't know how many of you know these pianists from so long ago that I'm referring to, Rachmaninoff considered Joseph Hoffman to be the greatest pianist in the world, and Joseph Hoffman considered Rachmaninoff to be the greatest pianist in the world. Rachmaninoff had massive hands, and Joseph Hoffman had such small hands that Steinway even made him a custom 7-foot piano with a smaller keyboard. That's how small his hands were. And you listen to the finger work of him, and it's astounding. He could do things that Rachmaninoff absolutely couldn't do, and of course, the reverse was true. Those were really the two great pianists, the greatest pianists of the early 20th century, although there were a lot of others who were in that amazing league. So, I don't know if we have time for any more here.
Well, we got like two more.
Two more questions, and then join in tomorrow for more. And remember, get your copy. Hopefully, I'll make sure that link is working later if it's not working for everybody. And like I say, for those of you who want to get your piano playing on the next level, go ahead and sign up. It's a free strategy session I do. I have a limited amount of time, but for people who really, really care about trying to get a breakthrough and make your practice more productive, come on, I'm here for you. So what do we got, Florence?
Okay, so let's do this quick question first, and then there's one I'm reserving for the end because I think it's about the right question for the end. But the one is, quick question, again, if my hands are cold, will it affect performance?
In a word, yes. I mean, first of all, you might do hand damage if your fingers are ice cold. Run them under warm water if you possibly can to get them warmed up. And you know, it never feels good playing if your hands are ice cold. I think you're going to enjoy the performance more. And like I said, just like an athlete will always warm up, and just moving your fingers can help. Put them in your pockets if you don't have access to running water before a performance. Rub your hands together and try to have your hands warmed up. I think it's important to do that if at all possible, particularly in your practice sessions. Take the time to warm up and start with slow movements, get things moving so that you don't do hand damage. You know, you'll just get one pair of hands. You want to treasure them. And last question for today, until tomorrow, same time. You can join me tomorrow as well. So what's the last question we have to wrap things up, Florence?
What music do you listen to outside of classical music?
Oh man, I listen to a lot of music. We've been listening to Spike Jones.
That's more for comedy,
that was
though.
kind of funny, just we happen to be listening to that. I love Snarky Puppy. I mean, I think they're just awesome group. I like a lot of different jazz. Chick Corea has always been one of my favorites. And I do listen to like a wide range of music. And sometimes, I'm random in this process. In one of our cars, I have a sound system that is hooked up where I can say, play, hey Google, play, and I'll just make something up on YouTube Music. And I like play living pianos on YouTube Music. Well, I actually might play some of my videos, bad example. But I'll just say something and just get something that's totally that I would never think of listening to. Of course, I love the Beatles. I never tire of the great songs. But there's a ton of music. For me, it's not about the style. It's about the substance. Because what is classical music? Classical music encompasses centuries and many, many dramatically different styles. I mean, what does a Monteverdi motet have to do with a Stravinsky work of chamber music? Absolutely nothing. They're both regarded as classical, different countries, different eras, different centuries, and it's the same thing with other styles of music. The vast majority of music written in the classical era, you think of Beethoven, Mozart, and Haydn, and Schubert a little later, but you know how many composers there were around back then? There were tons of composers, hundreds of composers, but mediocre, most of them mediocre, and just a few of them that we remember today. And this is true of any age. So to me, I don't care about the style. I care about the message, the emotion, and what makes it interesting for me personally, in a nutshell. And this is not just true of great music. This is true of great literature, great motion picture, great architecture, almost anything, is that balance between expectations and surprises. Because when a piece of music, you can predict everything that it's going to come next, it's boring. You have no interest. But if you have a piece of music where you have absolutely no idea what's going to come next, you stop caring. And it's the composers that manage to capture your attention, and you think it's going to go someplace, and that goes a little bit different, and it keeps you wondering what's coming next. And it doesn't matter if it's a pop song or it's something from pre-Baroque time, or something that is electronic music. It doesn't matter what it is. That's what makes music great and art great. Keeping you engaged by setting up expectations and gently or shockingly surprising you. And that is what we're going to leave this for. And we'll continue this next time. I hope everybody enjoyed this and got something out of it. And thank you for all joining me. We'll see you tomorrow. And I want to thank Florence for helping out. I couldn't have done this without Florence, because how could I read all these comments and be able to? So.
Okay, so tomorrow's session is the same time as today's. It's at 2 p.m. New York time, basically, because there's somebody from Greece that's trying to figure out if they can do it.
There we go.
We're the same time as New York.
We are. All right. So hopefully we'll see you guys again. Tell everybody about it, and thanks for joining me. I'm Robert Estrin. This is Living Pianos, in case you didn't realize it, right? See you next time. Bye-bye.